Subscribe to Teckoh on YouTube or you will forever be a bot at Fortnite.
Hey guys, welcome back to another video. So, you may have seen my video a while back about how to get lower ping in Fortnite. That video did extremely well and you guys seemed to really enjoy it. So today we're going to be doing another version of that video, but this time it'll be for getting higher FPS. Whether you play PC, console, or mobile, this video will be a full updated guide on a bunch of methods that'll help you increase your FPS, reduce input delay and stutters, and overall, it'll make your game much more smooth and enjoyable to play. Be sure to stick around for this whole video, guys, because if you do every single thing in this video, I guarantee you will see a massive improvement in your FPS. But with that said, let's get straight into the video. Anyway guys, the first thing you're going to want to do when you're trying to increase your FPS is to check your file system on your device to make sure it isn't filled up too much. If your drives are filled up too much, then you'll have lower FPS and your game is going to lag and stutter way more often than it should. But luckily this is a super easy fix. Basically, the way this works is that if the files on your PC take up too much space, then your drives are going to have too much to work with and less room to run, which will basically just make everything slower. This is the case for all platforms as well, not only PC. So I'm going to be showing this on PC, but basically for mobile and console players, you're just going to want to go to your storage settings and it should be pretty easy to do. The way you can go about this is by going into your file explorer on PC and going to this PC. Then scroll down and take a look at your drives. If the drive you play Fortnite on, which for me is my C drive, is more than about 80% full, then you're going to need to delete some stuff from that drive, or else your game is going to suffer. As a general rule, if your storage is under 80% full, just make sure it stays that way. If it's more than 80% full, then try to delete some stuff until it is. Anyway guys, moving into the second method, this next method is only for PC players, but stick around if you play on console or mobile because there's still a ton more for you. This method is a setting that's been around for quite a while, but one that most players still don't use. To turn on this setting, simply go to your NVIDIA control panel, which I access by right-clicking on my desktop and just selecting it. Then go to your Manage 3D Settings tab and set Low Latency Mode to Ultra. This is essentially a setting that NVIDIA developed that directly lowers your input response time in games. To prove my point, I'll put up a graph on screen which is directly from NVIDIA themselves that shows the impact this setting has on multiple different games and their response time. I will mention though, for this setting, your FPS may lower slightly as a result of using it, but it's extremely minuscule. I'm talking like 1 or 2 frames per second. Ultimately, for this setting, I think the pros heavily outweigh the cons in this situation because of the lower latency you'll have with this setting. And while we're in the NVIDIA control panel, I'll quickly mention that some people still have their settings on the wrong FPS. So if you're PC and have a 144 or 240 Hz monitor, head to your change resolution tab and just double check that your refresh rate is set to your monitor's actual refresh rate. This isn't a super common issue, but for the few people watching who might be on the wrong refresh rate, you're welcome. I just fixed all your problems. Anyway guys, another method which also works for all platforms is to disable your background programs while you play. Now, I know a lot of us like to blast Spotify, talk on Discord, and maybe watch some YouTube, maybe watch some of Teckoh's videos while we play. Now, I'm not here to tell you to simply stop using these programs while you play or to stop watching my videos, obviously, but it's worth keeping in mind that they're probably hurting your FPS if you are. So, if you happen to have something else open, like Chrome, Spotify, Discord, or something else, I would strongly recommend either closing them or using them minimally to keep your FPS up. And if you play on console or mobile, you may think that this doesn't apply to you, but it actually does. On console, you can still run background programs like Netflix, Hulu, YouTube, or even like a voice chat party while you play, and these can hog up quite a bit of FPS and possibly ping as well. And on mobile, if you have other apps running that you're not currently using, these can hurt your FPS too. So whenever you close an app, make sure that you're actually closing it fully and that you don't just press your home button. Otherwise, it might stay running in the background and hurt your performance as a result. Also guys, before we move into the next section, if you're watching this video right now, I want you to comment something down below that includes the keywords high FPS. And I'm going to be picking 1 or 2 people within the next week or so to gift a skin or a battle pass in game. I'll reply to the winner down in the comments about a week after posting this video. But with that said, let's move on to the next method. This next method is yet another method only for PC players, but once again, there's more to come for you console and mobile players, so stick around. This method is a pretty controversial one, but one that I personally feel works and makes a difference, and this is called timer resolution. Timer resolution is an extremely simple app that's supposed to basically help decrease your input delay. So while this shouldn't directly impact your FPS, it should still help with any input delay you may be having. To download timer resolution, simply go to the website cms.lucashail.com/timer-resolution and scroll down to where it says download timer-resolution.zip. Then simply go through the installation process and you should have the app on your desktop. Once you have the timer resolution app on your PC, you can simply open it, click the maximum button, and it'll give you the lowest input delay you can get. From there, you can simply keep it open while you play and you'll have less input delay. I will say ahead of time, some people say that this method doesn't work, but after personally trying it and using it for a while, I personally think it does, and I feel like there's a bit of difference, even if it's not a ton. Obviously, we're talking like half a millisecond here, so it's not going to be day and night. But anyway, if you feel like your game is delayed at times, then I strongly recommend trying this app to see if it helps you out. Finally guys, I want to cover another method that's relevant for all platforms, and that is your in-game settings. Keep in mind that apart from your actual device and setup, your in-game settings are probably the biggest factor that determine what FPS you get in-game. For console players, if I'm being completely honest, you really don't have that much customization over your graphics. But the biggest thing I would recommend is disabling motion blur, as it's known to cause a bit of extra input lag and often distorts things on your screen, which may hurt your actual gameplay and make you less accurate when aiming. For mobile players, the biggest thing that'll impact your FPS is your quality preset and your 3D resolution. I recommend setting your quality preset to either low or medium on mobile, depending on what FPS you actually get, and I also recommend adjusting your 3D resolution depending on your FPS as well. Ultimately, I'd recommend toying around with these settings a bit and taking the time to find a middle ground where your game looks decent, but also where you have playable FPS. Finally guys, for PC players, you basically have full customization over your graphics. What I recommend doing is setting every single thing to low in your display settings if you're on PC, because this is how you can best optimize your FPS, and honestly, even at the lowest settings, your game should still look decent. Even for me personally, I kind of feel like the lowest settings actually look best, but keep in mind that I am pretty used to them. One thing you can try and play around with is your render distance, and if you prefer it higher, then you can go ahead and set it that way. Really, having a high render distance makes little to no difference in terms of like any competitive advantage. It kind of just depends on how far you want to see stuff. If you want to see stuff far away, it might lower your FPS a bit, but it looks cool, I suppose. You can also lower your 3D resolution, or just lower your normal resolution, or even do both if your FPS is still struggling. It'll make your game look quite a bit worse, but it's absolutely worth considering if you're still getting low FPS, since FPS tends to give more of a competitive advantage than having a fancy high resolution. One side note for 3D resolution and normal resolution is that if you lower it slightly to something like 1600 by 900 or 83% or something along those lines, it really shouldn't look that much worse, and it should have a pretty solid impact on your FPS. So what I'd recommend doing with those settings is slightly lowering them, instead of just making them super low and making your game look like total crap. Lowering your resolution or your 3D res can take quite a bit of load off your PC and can drastically improve your FPS. So if you feel like you need to do it, then you can. And apart from those settings, I recommend having motion blur off, and multi-threaded rendering should really depend on your PC. If your PC is higher end, then I recommend having it on, and for lower end PCs that get maybe 60 to 90 FPS or lower, then I'd recommend keeping this setting off to avoid stressing out your CPU. But with that said guys, that's going to be it for this video. Let me know in the comments if these methods helped you out, and let me know if you'd like to possibly see a part 2 where I can dive more into some of the fancy advanced stuff that you can do to improve your FPS even more. In this video, I really tried to keep it mostly simple, but also give methods that I found worked best for me when I was struggling to get higher FPS. So while we didn't really go into any crazy fancy file crap, I tried to really get some effective methods regardless. Anyway guys, if you enjoyed this video, be sure to drop a like on it and subscribe if you'd like to see more videos just like this in the future. I hope you have an amazing day, and I'll see you in the next video. Bye for now.